when are you guys opening up? Has the snow melted up there yet?
A lot of it has melted over the last week. Yep.
We still have a good
I
in most
still
places.
I have bare ground.
Just starting to see spots of bare ground.
Wow. We're supposed to start April 12th, which means that registrations should start sometime next week.
Is that taken care of through the state? Through you?
We do it through the college.
Okay.
Makes it so much nicer.
So Nicole, your college should talk to Ron's college.
I'll get them on that right away.
Please do.
No, you should use Res. I've been trying to convert them to Res for the last 5 or 6 years now.
What?
I've been trying to convert my college to Res for quite some time now.
Doesn't sync up with their thing and they're not happy with it?
What software are you using now, Ron?
I don't know what they're using. I have no idea. The college has their own registration program. Let me rephrase that. The non-credit side of this college has its own registration program, as well as it needs to integrate with the credit side of the college's registration program. So it's like, really, let's duplicate our efforts some more. That's why one of the reasons I've been trying to get them to go with Res for the last few years, but they've resisted. No, we don't want to do that. It's too much work. It's too much work. Okay.
Do they charge for classes?
Do they charge? Yes, of course.
You know, that's probably one of the reasons they don't want to use RES, because then the money goes to MSF and has to come back. That's why
What's the difference, Murray? They're going to get paid one way or the other.
Sure, well, it's just more administration. That's all. Somebody doesn't want to do
for
the
them.
work, that's all. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
That's all it is.
Yep. So, but they're very set in their ways. They claim to be a very progressive college in terms of technology, et cetera. But in some arenas, they are just so blinded, so narrow focused that it's crazy. So, but it takes quite a load off me. They do all the registrations, they take all the money, they handle all the credit card BS, and if there's any cancellations and reschedules, they take care of that as well. So that leaves us free to teach, right, Mikey? So
yeah, we don't have to do any paperwork at all.
yeah, right.
You employees of the school then?
I'm sorry, Rita, say it again.
Are you employees of the school?
Negative. We are independent contractors of the school, but Learn to Ride is everybody, all the rider coaches are employees of Learn to Ride.
Yeah, but it's interesting because Harley also will not hook up to the RES system, because here in New Mexico, once we do and close an academy class, all the information has to be entered into RES so that the student has the correct credentials with MSF. So it's literally a duplication of work, but just the way it goes. Harley's so protective of their stuff. It's interesting.
I know exactly what you mean, Murray. I do the same thing after every class we teach.
Yep. Yep.
Now, the good news is that Res has been updated so that now you can actually, when you open up a student, what do I want to call it? Help me out, Nicole. A student record.
Sure.
All you have to do is put the e-course number in, and it will backfill everything but the driver's license number.
Yep.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, that's good. Got to make a note.
So Ron, do you have to do additional reporting to the state of New York for the waiver system? And if so, how does the school registration sink in, or does it help you at all with that reporting?
No, none whatsoever. They just do the registrations. Then they send me a roster. We teach the class, and then I import it to Res. And Res takes care of the state reporting. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did.
Cool. Hi, Lynn.
Hey, Rita, what's Wisconsin using?
It's all over the board. Some of the private sites are using Res. And for the most part, I believe the technical colleges are not. They're using their own system. But ultimately, for the waiver part to the DMV, the sites need to enter information directly into the DMV's system. And it is a laborious process of keying in the social security number. I don't remember what else. It's been a while since I've touched that system, but you have to key in information. It's not a ton of information, but I want to say it's just the social security number and the score and the pass fail, and if there's a 3-wheel restriction. And Wisconsin only requires for the sites to do the skills test, not any written test, because everyone, whether they get, the waiver is only good for the skills test at the DMV. The students still have to take a 25-question multiple guess written test at the DMV. So we figure between taking the written, the quiz on the e-course and taking the written test at the DMV, that seems to make everyone happy enough. So it's just a skills test waiver in Wisconsin, and all sites, private and public and nonprofit, all sites are able to give waivers.
Think it's going to be another quiet, happy hour. We need more alcohol. Hi, Sarah.
Yeah, I already have mine. It's after 5 here in New Mexico. So here the completion card serves as a full waiver. So they walk into the DMV and go, look what I have, and they get an endorsement. And actually with the dawning of the e-course here in New Mexico, the state program decided to not do any knowledge test at all. Once they complete the e-course, they figure they've tested out enough and they get the completion card and they're good to go.
Well, ever since Mark Wing's question a few weeks ago about what kind of coaching we do for preparing students for the quick acceleration for the test, I've been thinking about another coaching aspect, and that is getting students to use the front brake and the back brake in as efficient of a manner as possible. We have the students using the brakes independently, primarily using front brake, until they get to part 3 of exercise 2. And that seems like pretty far into the range curriculum before we start having them coordinate using front brake and back brake in any manner. And by that point, they've been using just that front brake so much that it's challenging for them to add in the back brake. So I'm wondering if any of you have any little tricks you do to help students incorporate that concept sooner.
Exercise 3.
Oh, I don't have anything, Rita. Exercise 3 is probably where I would continue to do that. If I were going to mention anything, I might say in exercise 1, when they're manipulating the controls, that they would be using the brakes together, but I doubt it. I like to keep it simple, keep it kind of separated, let them manipulate one, then the next, then the next. Not too much of a what do I want to say? Simultaneous manipulation at that point. I do have them use the clutch and brake so simultaneously.
Yeah, I also don't preload use of the rear brake until we get to using the rear brake in the riding step. I do sometimes discourage the use of the rear brake. Sometimes they'll have their feet power walking. They want to pick up their foot and use the brake. I'm like, hey, while your feet are on the ground, let's just worry about the front brake for now, and we'll get to the rear brake, I promise. And then just constant reminders, once we start using both. How many wheels you got on that thing? Do you want them both to stop?
At the local community college where I'm teaching, we're using slide deck D on Friday night, and there's a terrific slide that expresses the difference in total stopping distance of 1 brake, 2 brakes, which brake, and then also another one about the weight transfer for quicker stops. I did notice you kind of mentioned introducing it conceptually, and that's definitely more of a cognitive introduction and reinforcement from the e-course. But yeah, there's a number of reasons why I don't think you'd want them trying to use both brakes until at least part 3 of number 2, and then practice that more on number 3. That having feet on the ground is nice when the motorcycles aren't moving very fast.
Those of us on here tend to be, at the moment anyways, I believe tend to be more of the category of folks who are mentors and quality assurance folks. When you are mentoring your coaches or out doing mentoring visits, quality assurance visits, is it common for you to see coaches who are not noticing students who are not using the rear brake well into exercise 3?
Yes.
I think it's fairly common to see coaches who don't really understand the value of the entirety of exercise 2, period, end of story. So my answer to that is yes.
our first year of QA wrapped up last year, and we had wrap-up meetings and discussed trying to what was a common theme, and that's what we based our winter update on, and a lot of it fell under range management, which is a pretty broad topic anyhow, but range management is what we tried to focus on, keeping safety top of mind. And maybe this year we'll, not that we were on a feel-good tour, but we wanted to break them in slowly and maybe hone in on more detail this year as far as the coaching and what they're coaching, what they're missing. But that's how we handled our QA this year. Even though it may not stick, I try to stick with a phrase with exercise 2 and 3 of both brakes clutch, left foot down. And I kind of just repeat that as it's just a phrase that they hear over and over. If it sticks, great. If it doesn't, I just, introduce it to them individually. But that's what I use in my dialogue of when it's my turn to narrate a demo is both brakes clutch, left foot down. So.
I have seen it, Rita, not a lot, but there was one QA in particular I can think of where they were into exercise 5, and I watched the student proceed to do the entire exercise without ever touching the rear brake.
Wow.
During the stop points on exercise 5 is a place where, if they've gone around and they're not using them, you can remind them, hey, remember, we got 2 brakes, let's use the rear brake as well. And maybe you get a better result next time.
Do any of you tie the stopping distance into what Mark Wing had talked about, this total stopping distance and the use of brakes? That's also mentioned in the e-course. Do any of you tie that concept back into the e-course if you don't use slide deck E? And at what point might you do that if you do?
I usually tie that back in during the quick stop exercise. Excuse me, losing my voice.
The stopping distance demo is another good place to reinforce that, although they may not see it. At the very least, they're seeing a coach's, at least moderate skill level on, something closer to a real world quick stop.
I guess you could say, if they come in on their second run, they blow through the intersection and they do their stop. You could say, and that was a stop with both brakes. Imagine if he only used one brake. Where would that stop have ended up, out yonder? So.
I think we should go back and use the rear wheel skid in someone in exercise.
You can change my tires.
Thanks, I've changed enough of my own.
The students do enough of that.
We don't get a whole ton of skids, front or rear, once in a while, but not like the old days. By the time they've done all of that stopping in exercise 3, they have a better feel for it, and the skid rate, I believe, has dropped way down.
So I came in, I think a little late in this conversation. I'm not sure what the current topic is.
Whatever topic you want to bring up, Jeff.
That was what I was just gonna say too, Ron. Whatever topic you want. We're just kind of coming up with things to
I actually,
contribute.
sorry, I actually do have a topic I logged on specifically to ask this group because I just got done with a BRC earlier today, and I had a student who was doing, you know, off mediocre throughout the whole class. During the swerve eval, his speed was good, and he started to swerve, hit the front brake, but was actually able to recover. And it was really nasty looking, but there is nothing to, he didn't lose any points on it. Sorry, I'm laughing to myself. It's like I'm trying, how would you, I mean, I basically, I couldn't score any points on it, but oh, it was nasty looking. You guys ever seen something like that?
My question is, with that student, when you went to graduate him, what was his reflection on, or her reflection on, that experience? Were they aware of the challenge that they had, or were they oblivious?
Oh, no, yeah. Well, he had it, his excuse was that he rolled off the throttle, and as he rolled off the throttle, he hit the brake, and it didn't really make any sense to me because he claims he wasn't covering the brake during the swerve, and I just we had a long hard chat about, you know, getting the endorsement isn't necessarily being ready for the road. Sorry, I just I've been a coach for 11 years, and I've had lots of different, you know, people pass and fail the class, and I've never seen anybody just hit the front brake during a swerve and survive it. I mean, I've had people hit the front brake during a swerve and fall, and it's easy to counsel them, you know, it's like, you know, they fell during the eval, and that's fairly easy. But this one, like I said, it was I had never actually seen it.
Jeff, I'm curious, how did that student do in exercise 14? Were they nervous about the swerves at all?
No, not at all. He actually did. He never touched the brake at all before. Either in the swerve. Actually, he never fell the whole class. He was, like I said, he was mediocre as far as being smooth on everything. But you know, it's the type of guy you just I don't know. Like I said, I had never seen it before. I just was wondering if any of you have ever seen it.
I've seen it a few times, and you know, it's if their speed is moderate and they're not swerving aggressively, some brake application can happen without negative consequences. It's almost like a trail braking moment if you spin it that way. But I've certainly seen it go badly too. But yeah, once in a while, a little bit of braking while swerving. And I'm kind of curious if anybody here as a rider has done that once or twice. I know I've had a little overlap at times, and sometimes it was a brain fart, and sometimes it was, you know, the conflict of different motivations of like, I really need to slow down. I really need to start swerving now. And try not to get in that situation too often, but you know, once in a while, and if you balance it out, it can happen.
Yeah, this wasn't a trail braking type thing. This is his actual front tire skid in a curve that was recovered. I mean,
the front tire was skidding.
The front tire was skidding. You could hear it. You could see it. It's actually, you know, he actually almost ended up. So the only other time, well, I have had a front tire, in the middle of a swerve before. The student actually ended up in the hospital. We had to call an ambulance out. Luckily, the hospital and the ambulance were about 500 yards away. So this was on a military base where the hospital was like nearby. But this one was, like I said, there was an actual skid but a successful recovery. Bike never fell.
Did he wind up getting off the brake, or did he continue to slide until the wheel just hooked up again?
No, he got off the brake. It's like he did what he was supposed to do. Front tire skid, immediately released, and he was able to recover. So like I said, so I couldn't deduct any points because he was, perfect time and everything. It's like, geez, what do you do on this situation?
Jeff, with your years coaching, I'm sure then you're familiar with the training aid that used to have a front tire skid in the classroom.
Yeah, actually that predates me. I started in 2009, 2008, 2009. So I was with the BRC 13 is my original curriculum. I never did the MSc or whatever you call the other one. So that was before my time.
Yeah, we've had the most interesting braking thing I've seen is with the old BRC. In the braking evaluation, we were on a military base and a young Marine came up really fast, hit the cones, locked up the front wheel, and literally stopped it from turning. And he went, memory tells me it was about 18 feet in a straight line, put his left foot down, let off the brakes and looked at the two of us like, how did I do? And we both just kind of shook our heads. We had a moment and we motioned him on. He had the presence of mind to keep the handlebars square and keep his head and eyes up, and don't really have a problem with that. So startling to say the least.
Sometimes when you see students who are braking while swerving, the cause is the rider coach standing too close to the swerve box during exercise 13, during the swerve exercise. And so because the rider coach is standing fairly close to the swerve, the students are swerving, and because they know they need to stop next to the rider coach, they're braking while they're still swerving. And so helping the rider coach move farther away from that swerve area seems to help the students separate those two actions.
Yeah, I could see that happening. That wasn't the case. I usually stand down close by the turn from a stop entrance is where I'm standing. So they got plenty of room there.
When students cover the brake while swerving, when they get to me, I always say, see all these gray hairs? Each one's caused by a student covering the brake while going through the swerve area. Don't do that anymore. I got enough. And they go, oh, sorry. Off they go.
Maybe I should turn my video on. I don't have any hair, so I can't use that excuse.
Well, you could tell them that the reason you have no hair is because you've torn it all out.
There you go. Yeah, I pulled a hair out for each one of them. Right?
Forgive me if you've been on before and introduced yourself, but I don't remember seeing you. Where are you from?
Oh, sorry. I've during about a year ago when these first started, I was on almost every week, but we've been I teach on a military base, and we've been full schedule since I think we had April off and part of May, and about mid-May we've been full schedule since then. So here, I'll turn my video on.
Well, it's nice to have you back. So where are you stationed these days?
Oh, sorry, Cherry Point, MCAS Cherry Point, and I also do classes at Camp Lejeune. There I am. Hello?
Hi, and I will most certainly turn my video on once I'm done eating supper. So apologize for not having video, but I'll be there soon.
Yeah, I had to put a shirt on, so.
Pants optional still though, right?
Yeah, luckily the camera doesn't go down that far. Got to remember not to stand up.
Hey, Mark. I'm trying to remember the training aid you're referring to. And I'm having trouble remembering it. Can you help me out there? Yeah, there we go.
I'll see if I can pull it up and point my camera to it. Hang on a second.
It's the one I'm thinking of. It was a Ninja on a gravel road. And it was a view from the front. It was a great picture. It was very clear what was happening with the motorcycle.
Oh, I remember that one. I thought he was talking about something else.
You're referring to the one on the dirt road?
Yeah.
There's also the old outrigger run from the RSS days.
That's the one I was thinking about, Lynn, was the old outrigger one, but that's, I thought he was talking about something that we actually had in the class, but
I was referring to a couple of images from slide deck D, which is a review of level 1 if you've had some gap before returning to finish up the BRC.
And so slide deck D was, or is pretty much the same thing as the old presentation that we used in BRC 2013, right? Or many of the images are the same, if I recall correctly.
Actually, I think that they might have even been taken from some of the same images that are in the student handbook. And right now I'm digging around to see if I have a student handbook handy, because I think that's going to be the quicker way for me to point it out.
all right, well, Laura's going to take us on to something else then. Okay, Laura?
Mark, look at page 10. I think that's what you're looking for, the braking power thing.
In the black book?
In the student handbook, page 10. Yeah, that.
Okay.
If you talk while you put it up there, Mark, it'll go to bigger pictures if people are using that.
Some people don't remember the black book.
Some people don't remember the yellow book.
We got recently came across some old boxes of the black book. I stuck that up on Facebook, picture of them, asking for uses for them, trying to get some funny ones. I suggested I glue them together and make a obstacles for exercise 13.
Well, you could, wallpaper the inside of your container.
Yeah, someone did suggest that they might come in handy for the next toilet paper shortage.
Way too stiff.
Different type of skid mark.
I like that one.
One of the ranges I went to, they would give the students tape to write their names and put it on their helmet or maybe on their bike. And at the end of the class, the students would stick their names on the wall of the container. So the container wall is just plastered with name tags. It was kind of cool.
I make them take it back to the classroom so I can remember their names without their bike. So. I keep blue painter's tape for that. It comes in real handy for the names. I just can't remember names beyond unless I say it like about 100 times. There's people I work with that I've seen them like every day for like a year and I don't know their names. I got to get them all name tags.
Do people not use name tags in the classroom? Is that like not a, besides what you're describing, Jeff, is it not normal that people are having students make a name tag for themselves somehow?
Oh, I usually don't use the name tags in the class. In the classroom, when we do introductions, I make a little map. And so I can look at that to call them their names there, but I wouldn't recognize them unless, it depends, each class, it's only a few people. If it's only like 2 or 3 students, it's not too bad. But when it gets to be, a dozen students and trying to remember everybody's name in that short amount of time, name tags come in handy.
Jeff, I love the map concept. I've used that myself in classroom. And yeah, once they get out on range and put helmets on, then all is lost.
Well, that's what the painter's tape is for if we're out on the range.
I bumped into something a couple times at the end of this last season that I have never seen before specifically. And since it happened a couple times, it made me wonder if there's sort of something changing about the culture of people that arrive at the class, or just sort of the nature of our society in general. But after, something like 10,000 students, I just recently had 2 within about a month and a half of each other who had panic attacks during early exercises that they were not able to recover from. One of them explained to me enough that panic attacks and high levels of anxiety were something that he dealt with on a regular basis. The other made a reference to PTSD without ever articulating exactly what the origin of that was from, and I didn't really see it as my place to ask what it was from, but simply to ask a lot of learner-centered questions to try to help each of them to the best that I could. Both of them did choose to step out of the class. I'm curious if anybody else has had a similar circumstance, and just, specifically it stood out because these were panic attacks where the student really didn't have any agency to overcome the experience that they were having of themselves. And I've had lots of people be nervous and work with them from a standpoint of they were capable of working with themselves, getting over nervousness, but this was a whole different level and in such short succession. I'm curious if any of you have had any experiences with this.
We had one young lady, it wasn't this year or last, it was maybe the year before, who was doing okay in the class, but I think she had some other stuff going on in her life, and it, as things got a little bit harder, with each exercise, it just like came to a head, and she just had a little meltdown, and she was pretty incoherent actually for a little bit, and so we agreed, come back another time, And she did come back another time. I said, you let us know when you're ready and feel comfortable. And, so, a month or two went by and she came back and she started over from scratch and she did just fine. So I don't have the inside scoop, but I think she just had a lot on her plate that particular day, and it probably wasn't a good day for her to learn a new skill. What were the symptoms, if I can ask, that kind of brought all this to your attention?
Well, fortunately, I didn't really have to do any diagnosing. Both students in these scenarios were progressing adequately, that I wasn't experiencing any particular concern about whether or not they were coordinated enough or tracking progress adequately to continue. So it was self-reporting. They communicated to me, what they were experiencing, and I did my best to just ask questions and figure out what I could do to make things better. For the woman that reported PTSD having been triggered, we gave an extended break, and she wasn't able to bring her composure back to return, but we tried to cooperate with what she expressed as her need.
The closest I've had is a student who had social anxiety, and the other coach was creating situations where the other coach was essentially forcing him to interact with the other students, and it wasn't working well for him. And his brother happened to be in the class with him. And so his brother explained to me why the student had decided to counsel himself out and was having a nervous breakdown. And, I'm thankful that we all have throughout life many learning moments. So it helped me be even more sensitive to what's going on with students, and to not assume that their struggles are necessarily so much just what your average run-of-the-mill everyday types of struggles with learning how to ride a motorcycle, that sometimes they may be even deeper than that.
Rita, was that the sound of your chair squeaking, or are you raising chickens now?
It was my chair squeaking, but my daughter just bought a new house and she intends to have chickens come spring.
Has anybody else had students with anything like a panic attack or anxiety getting in the way of them being able to continue?
Well, yeah, I can't say classic panic attack, but I can say anxiety. And it's interesting because I do both the state and riding academy, and I saw much more riding academy anxiety, mostly due to the nature of the training bikes. I mean, in New Mexico here, we have a lot of folks who are vertically challenged, and you put them on a big bike like that with even with a low seat, lots of power, it can create some anxiety. And when I look at the demographics of the student base that are in those classes, it all kind of makes sense. And so I've had a number of students who came and counseled themselves out due to anxiety, came back a second time, progressed maybe to exercise 5 or 6, did the same thing, came back a third time and passed just fine. So I can't say that it's specific. I'm guessing it's related to the bikes, but I'm guessing there are actually other issues at play there, having to do with, how do I put this? So I don't want to come off as a jerk. But people challenge them. When people challenge the envelope, people have different levels of parameters that they're willing to deal with when they challenge their personal envelope. And I think that that's more what we've encountered as opposed to panic attacks. By the way, I like your gong bowl there in the background.
Thanks. It's Tibetan singing bowl.
I have a very similar one that we use on a regular basis.
Murray, were those students that you just described having any distinct control issues before they had gotten to that point where they decided they had enough?
Oh, absolutely. Sure. The majority of those would come up in the first 4 exercises, and probably 50% of those would be in exercise 2, part 2. Then the exercise 3, kind of another 20, 30%, and then exercise 4, it had more to do with shifting than anything else. But I think just an anxiety about pushing that personal envelope. And, I've always been a big proponent of spending the appropriate amount of time in the first 4 exercises for students to get comfortable with that whole process. But unfortunately, there are some folks that there's some kind of it's hard to say that there's a block there, but we most, and again, I don't want to bunch people into a group, but a lot of the folks that we saw having these problems were female students that were in the 40 to 55 range, who had been passengers, who decided they wanted to ride their own motorcycle, or in some cases, husbands had passed away and left them a motorcycle, and they decided they wanted to engage in the sport, which I think is all good stuff, because anytime we can encourage people to make decisions kind of in situ, if you will, I think it's a good thing for life in general. And again, that could be just relative to our demographic here in New Mexico, because we're a cross-cultural situation where we have a wide range of individuals that come to take classes. It can be a real challenge.
The moments when someone loses control and get nerves, I mean, I've seen that many, many times, and frequently I can talk someone through their self-management issues in connection with talking about what was the cause and effect that they experienced in operating the motorcycle. I guess these 2 particular ones I had brought up because they stood out as different to me in that the students weren't showing significant lack of control, and I was kind of satisfied with their progress, which made it all the more surprising to me when they did choose to counsel themselves out.
Sure, I think it begs the question. In my case, it kind of begs the question of how do you define meeting an objective? That becomes an issue, and I think every coach has a different approach. And so, I kind of turn that back to the student and have a conversation with the student about how they feel about what's going on and how they're progressing. But yeah, no, I've I had a student years ago in a state class that was on a Yamaha 225. And this individual was just kind of a space case the whole time. And they struggled and they worked and they barely made the objectives. And then when it came to doing the evals, they totally aced the evals. All of a sudden there was a switch that was flipped and they, you know, performed perfectly. So much of that is, you know, the individual and what their own self-assessment is, what their understanding of what their envelope is, plus the challenge of learning to ride a motorcycle. I mean, it's a pretty heady kind of interaction that goes on there, whether we want to admit it or not. There's a lot happening. Had to let the dog in. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you about PTSD. I've encountered it with a couple of students and had the conversation, but it wasn't really related to them not continuing in the class. It was more something that was happening that was a trigger that something changed, but we were able to work through it and talk through it and kind of progress from there. But yeah, that's a whole other issue. That's wow. I lucked out. I was never subject to any of that stuff.
Don, I wonder if you have a little bit more background to speak to that topic.
I'm a novice. But I don't like calling it PTSD. I prefer to call it PTSI because it's not a disease, it's an injury, a mental injury that causes these things to happen. And I'd kind of like to hear what Melinda has to say about it, being a grief counselor.
Yeah. Like I said, I might have hopped on at the I might have hopped on at the wrong time, I would say, or right time. I don't know. Hold on. I'm gonna actually start my camera for this one. I actually stepped away from my class because I was like eavesdropping on you guys, and like I heard these anxiety, panic attacks, and then I hear one of my favorite subjects, PTS. Which I don't add an extra one on the end. I just there's no D or I on it for me. Yes, I have had people on a panic attack in the middle of a range. But being a trained therapist that goes through those, I was able to deal with that. And then, yes, PTSD. I had a young lady that showed up with her service dog, and she's like, "Is it okay if I stay?" And I'm like, "Why wouldn't you be able to?" And she had a panic attack. So it does happen out there. It's not just military people, guys. These are other people that are fighting through things. They come to ride a motorcycle to combat their own thing and to face their own fears and to take control back of their own life. But if you have any specific questions, I think we've met. I don't know if we've met yet, Mark, but if you have any specific questions about that, I'm open to helping you and talk to you about that.
Could you make any comment about best practices or most suitable approaches to someone that's in the middle of either a panic attack or a post-traumatic syndrome response?
Yes. Let's see. First off, my question would be, have they what's the word I'm looking, it disclosed to you that they had a panic, that they had an anxiety thing? So you already have an idea that it might happen, or that there was a possibility of it?
Not in advance, but as the onset was taking place, both of these people were communicative.
Yes, I mean, most of them are. Yes. Okay. So I'm going to use my famous 3 words. Tell me more about that. Tell me more.
Well, one of the people started reporting feelings of overwhelm, which I wound up queuing into,
Is that enough?
encouragements towards, relaxing, and I minimized the amount of coaching feedback. Worked towards presenting a calm disposition, and encouraging in the most simple sort of procedural approaches to get through the exercise where the anxiety was building. And we did get through the exercise, and then she reported that she was having a PTS response afterwards, and then she kind of sequestered herself in the restroom for a very extended period of time. We didn't necessarily have agreement about how much time was going to be involved, and I asked one of the other female students to check on her, and once I understood that she was having a little bit of a meltdown in the restroom, we took an extended break and just kind of waited until she was ready to come out and make some other decisions.
All right. Well, hey, that was really good thinking on your part. One of the techniques I share that I do for myself, for others, is called the 5, which is our 5 senses, right? If you, it's a pretty simple thing. Like I said, you don't have to be trained to do it, but it's a good way to help someone stay into reality. If you see someone going into like a hypersensitive state, you would just say, hey, what's something you can see? What's something you can smell? What can you hear? What can you touch? Your hands are on the handlebars. Your feet are on the ground, right? And then, hear, see, taste. And it's a funny one. That's usually the last one because people go, taste. And I'm like, didn't you have a donut for breakfast? And, something like that, right? And by the time they get to that, they're already centered. They've come back down to a center space because they've went out of that space that they're in, and they've started to come back into a space where they can listen to you. It works the majority of the time. Like I said, I use it with myself. I use it with my child that has panic attacks. And it helps, it really does. But yes, anytime you have situations where I would ask yourself that question. First off, I was asking them, hey, talk to me, tell me more, right? If you see a safety situation, that I would make sure you assess that too, safety for that. If I'm glad you sent somebody in there with her, so that's important. But yeah, those are my biggest ones, especially if you're not trained to see them, or if you are trained to see them, that's great. But that's always a great one, just to kind of take it out of the situation right quickly. Telling them to stop and let's just physically do some things, because then you're not talking to them, they're talking to you. And so, yeah, those are some great things. And then, like I said, just talk to them, like, let them talk to you. And of course, stop the situation, stop the exercise you're on if you see that it's really gotten dangerous. Yeah. And Murray, I love you, man. But my passion, don't tell me that a woman, just because she's short, can't, that she's having issues. Because I think that's a coach thing. I think that we have to be aware of our situations. And yes, I do know statistically wise and stereotypically wise, our short ladies do struggle the most. But that's I think it's a coach thing. I think that's let's have a discussion kind of technique. And so, yeah.
Yeah, no, I have the discussion with them, but it's not that I never tell them that they can't do it. That's not an issue.
I know that. I know. And I have a feeling you would do that. And I knew you wouldn't from just listening to you, I don't think you would do that, but I would just say, I like to tell people, be aware of the way you speak to someone and the way that your biases come off. You know, because automatically if someone's heard the words PTSD or PTS, what do they automatically think? This person was in the military, right? Well, the last person that had a panic attack on my range that she shared with me, thank goodness, and that she did have PTS, and it was because she was a sexually assaulted, you know, she had been sexually assaulted, right? And so she's in there to take this class to take back power of her own life. And so we have to be aware of our biases and be aware of how we look at people and what we automatically think of them. You know, same thing goes for, I had a young man that walks in my classroom, he's got a full grill on his face or on his teeth, and, you know, dreads, everything. He tells me he's a rapper. You know, how quickly could I've said, oh my gosh, this guy's gonna ride a sport bike and this guy's gonna be a handful and, you know, and all this. I ended up being one of my most amazing students, but because I put my bias, right, and I was aware of them. So I encourage you on. So, but I have to step away for just a quick second, and I'll be back on in a few minutes.
So trauma is trauma. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, and how you choose to deal with it is, you know, being sensitive to what the person is going through. And I think that, you know, so many times we have the opportunity to inspire people to move beyond their boundaries through the process of riding a motorcycle. It changes so many things in people. I think it's an amazing process. So yeah, I would agree with Belinda. We have to be careful about any biases that we have on those levels. I don't know if you want to call it PTSD or PTSI or PTSS. It's a result of some kind of a traumatic experience, and there's a key in there or a trigger. And so we need to understand that.
I like the fact that Belinda brought up a few of the things about being present, because that is the best way to combat the anxiety that happens with anybody that goes down that road. And anxiety, and I can't remember where I read it, but it's defined as worrying about the future, worrying about the unknown. What's going to happen? I don't know. I'm anxious about it. And so by bringing somebody back into the present moment, where are your feet? How does it feel on the ground? Where are your hands? What are you touching? By making a person present, you know, having a drink, what does it taste like? Having a potato chip, what does it taste like? What that does is it brings them out of that worrying about the future and the anxiety that comes with it, what's about to happen, and it puts them in the present moment. And by being in the present moment, you can't have anxiety about the future. So a lot of people that talk about mindfulness or practice meditation and not thinking about other things, but being present and in the moment, it helps to reduce anxiety. And I'd like to know what your thoughts on that are, Mark.
For many types of anxiety that I perceive people happening, I do see their wheels spinning about things that are not in the moment. And so what you just said made a lot of sense. But that starts to overlap into an interesting related topic, and a little pet peeve of mine. Sometimes I hear coaches and sometimes other motorcyclists, you know, saying you need to be confident, and it's a strange thing because confidence, someone once described it to me as an affirmation of repeatable results. And if you've just had results that caused you to feel out of control and you're not certain about which actions caused the result that led to a feeling of being out of control, your confidence will likely evaporate if you had any to start with, and anxiety might occur. And while being in the moment can help, relax, if the next moment is another run at that exercise, there's some kind of positive feedback loop that needs to happen to circumvent that feeling of a lack of control. So some of the just being present can help to relax. Yet if it's in the middle of an exercise, being present is a very dynamic moment.
But being present is here and now. Somebody wrote, it was Sarah Bazell, verbalizing what is versus what if. Another way to think about it. So if you're present in a fluid moment, you're always present. Because you're not in the past and you're not in the future, you're in the moment. And if that moment happens to be rolling on a set of wheels, wherever you are at that moment is where you are. So I don't think there's an answer, but I like what you just brought up because you said you need to. And I think anytime that as a coach we say something like that, we're already in rough ground. It's anytime somebody tells you or directs you in that nature, there's already some friction forming. How could you, maybe is a better way, how could you ease up on this? Or what would make you feel better at this moment? Anytime we say you need to, when somebody starts any phrase to me in public, you need to, man, I'm already turning off. I'm already saying, who are you to tell me what I need to do? Whether I need it or not, most of the time I do, but those are friction moments that come from just how we speak with each other. So I like that you brought that up. It really helps.
So Dawn, one of my favorite things I like to tell people, and I've heard a pastor say this, was I was listening to one time, and it's hilarious, and I've always said it all the time, because of course I'm an advocate for never telling someone what they need to do or they should do. And he would say, please don't should on yourself and don't should on others. And so, so don't tell someone what they should be doing, right? And so big passion of mine. No, don't should on yourself and please don't should on others. They know what they need and what they need to do. So
I'm with you all about not shoulding on anybody. Have any of you else bumped into that sort of myth of confidence, need to be confident?
Well, I don't think it's something you can tell someone to do. It has to come from within, But I do find that sometimes students really are their own worst enemy because they're doing just fine, within my parameter of success, that they're not perfect, but they're making progress, and they're making mistakes that are typical for someone at that level learning a new skill. And I'm not bothered by the fact that they're making those particular mistakes. It's kind of part of the learning curve. But some people put a very high expectation on themselves, and so their confidence gets diminished because they're in a land of false expectations, I guess I'd say.
It sounds to me that that this can really be can really create a bit of a disaster. Even starting with exercise 1, the way exercise 1 is presented and the pace of exercise 1, because of all the pretty much direct instruction that we provide, or really all the tasks that we provide in exercise 1 I can see the anxiety, the one person or the students that fall behind a step or maybe don't hear everything. A common thing I've seen with coaches is they may pay attention to the first couple of rows, but they're really not aware of what's going on in the back with student number 11 and student number 12 at the back of the stage. So I have a feeling that anxiety can multiply and build up to a point where the coach isn't even recognizing the progress of the students. And I'm just wondering if there's telltale signs that the light should go off in our heads that this student's really is building up some type of anxiety or nervousness or their stress is being overloaded.
Well, I think a coach that's moving at a pace where students are getting left behind in exercise 1 might not be the coach that's going to recognize that anxiety, you know. I when I'm doing preps, I tell the exercise 1 coaches, I said, take a breath and take your time, because it's not just about standing up here and reading the cards. You have to actually evaluate and coach. And it's so important because this is, laying the groundwork for everything else. So, you need to take the time and make sure that people are on the same page, say as we go through the exercise at least.
Well, I think also, like kind of what Lynn said, if you're paying attention, you'll notice, right? And I think if you're teaching and not facilitating the class, if you're teaching the class and you're not probably going to notice those things, right? Because don't forget, we're not teachers, we're coaches, right? And but we facilitate the class. And so if we're facilitating, which means we're having them communicate with us too, then we will already notice those things, right? But if we're teaching someone, we're talking to them and not with them, then it's gonna be harder for us to pay attention to that.
So are there some, I'm sorry to step on you, but are there some telltale signs? Some of you are certainly trained in recognizing when someone's having a panic attack, or are there symptoms or signs that would come out that we should, like I said, the light bulb should go off, that we should recognize this person's heading down, something is something's cooking in their head that we should recognize.
I think a tip off for me that people are having problems is that they lose the ability to follow simple directions. And it's because their brain is doing other stuff. And, when I see that there's a communication issue, we got to take a step back and figure out what's the cause of that. And sometimes it's simple when they didn't hear or they can't hear, they have a hearing thing. But other times it's just that they've started to become overloaded because the wheels are turning in their brain and they're not able to absorb new information going in. And it's not just panic that causes that. There's other stuff too, but.
So just really watching their body language. You verbally, non-verbally, people tell us a lot more than they do verbally, right? And just like watching how they're fidgeting, how they're moving. Are they taking a little longer to put their gear on? Are they, are they anxious, but as in like, are they hurrying and putting their gear on? Those are just kind of specific to the situation kind of things that I've noticed and that I can pick up on a little bit easier is, where are they standing in the class even? Right? Did they choose the bike that was in the back of the class? You know, the back of it, you know, we've got 12 bikes, 6 to 12 bikes lined up. Did they automatically go to the back, right? Or did they automatically come to the very front in there, you know, right there? So just body language, being aware of that and being able to pick up on those kind of cues, I think is important. And so, and then like I said, asking them just talking with them also, you know, you can talk with them from the time you leave the classroom after the intros and walk into the bikes, right? Even though that's literally 2 minutes of walking, you could learn a lot about somebody in those 2 minutes. And hopefully you've already picked up on when they walk in the room, how their body is, you know, because you'll have those that'll be like really tensed up, really tensed up. And then you have the ones that talk a lot, really fast. They're really, I'm so excited to be here. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be here. Right. And those are the ones you're going to be like, ooh, you know, and so just being aware of their nonverbals and the way they're acting.
I gotta say, I don't always trust my ability to read people, but I feel like a lot of ground gets covered if I can set up a tone that's open and relaxed. And honestly, I tend to be a little bit of a goofball in the class, so that way other people can feel comfortable just being themselves. At the very least, I'm probably the dorkiest person there, so everybody else feels a little bit cooler. And if there's a good stage set for people to be somewhat open and forthright about whether or not they're nervous, a lot of times people let me know about that. And so I don't have to read them as much if they are communicating to me. So, you know, tone setting early on and making it an open environment strikes me as more important than trusting my ability to read people.
I'd like to jump on top of what you just said, Mark, in the fact that I think sometimes we try too hard to anticipate or read who our students are. And I'll give an example. There's some really great tools in the Rider Coach Guide, and I think it references in like Wired That Way, and you know, are people popular, peaceful, perfect, powerful? That's the other one. And when I first learned of that, I focused really heavy on it, thinking that by knowing or having an assumption of who somebody was, that I could magically make something happen. And that's where the human element came in and proved to me that I was wrong. And so I think it's important that we are aware of things like that as tools, but don't rely on them too heavily and use them as just one of the many clubs in the golf bag or tools in the tool set to maybe guide us a little bit more. But you know, when it comes down to it, the communication between us and the student individually is where the magic happens. And if you just ask them, they'll let you know who they are and what they need, what they want. And so the guessing goes out the window and makes things a lot easier.
I would imagine that, you know, having a well-developed tool set on reading people effectively is a nice complement to that. And Belinda, I hope I didn't come across as negating what you were just saying. I think there's a lot of value in it. I don't trust myself in that capacity.
Well, that sounds like it's a great opportunity for you to find some continuing education and then pick up some great skills and, you know, people or skills. There's lots of great stuff out there. And yeah, and you don't have to be a therapist or, you know, anybody in the mental health field to take those classes. You can always find them out there.
It just seems like a lot of times it's a matter of being patient and actually listening to what your students have to say. The best compliment I get after a class is when somebody who was struggling came up and said, "Wow, you're so patient. Thank you so much." I think that's so. I mean, if stop and think about it, guys. I mean, why do we ride motorcycles? I ride motorcycles because it keeps me in the moment. I'm blessed with being somehow I got hit with this thing by the universe that keeps me in the moment most of the time. And so if we can pass that sense on to the students to be in the moment, that's a real gift. You know, getting out from under all the rest of the stuff that exists in your life for X amount of time is a really wonderful thing to experience. So again, I say be patient and listen to what your students are saying, and they'll tell you exactly what's going on to the extent that they can.
So I'm gonna break the silence. What is one of the first things we teach our students to do? Is to find neutral, right? If you as a rider coach can learn to just talk in that neutral tone of voice when someone is starting to have a panic attack or starting to get anxious, how calming is that, right? That neutral, either keep it positive or keep it neutral. And it's amazing how just calm the entire class will get, or just anything is at any time in life. You know, when I do potty training with parents, it's funny because it's like one of the funniest things. You would not think parents come to therapy, families come to therapy for potty training. They do, by the way. And we teach them, just be neutral, man. Just be neutral. It's a fact of life. You're going to learn to ride a motorcycle. They're going to learn to pee in the pot. I promise you. All right. Just be neutral.
But I think one of my best training for coaching motorcycling was I raised 5 kids by myself as a single parent when they were teenagers. And at one point, one of my sons he was challenging. We had lunch one day and he goes, "You know, Dad," he goes, "it's always been wonderful because you've always listened to everything I had to say and stayed calm the whole time." And my response to him is, "Well, I've always believed in separating the behavior from the individual, but what I have to confess to is the whole time you were talking to me, my hair was standing on end. I just couldn't let on to it." And so I think that was, for me as an individual, that was pretty good training on being a rider coach. You have to be able to hear what they have to say and respond to it without your hair standing on end. So anyway, I think that was good training for me.
So Mark, I think I might have missed a story. Did you share why so you had an incident? What this all brought these kind of things up for you?
Yeah, there were 2 different individuals at the end of this last season who had very different types of responses that were in a different context for me, in the sense that I'm very accustomed to seeing people get nervous when riding a motorcycle, you know, have anxious responses if they were feeling doubt about their control. And that's just sort of par for the course as a rider coach. But these folks were not exhibiting signs of unique struggle, but they just started reporting that they were having feelings of anxiety. One of them, was talking about it specifically in terms of anxiety. The other one, in terms of experiencing overwhelmed, and the woman that spoke of feeling overwhelmed, after we took the break, she made mention to a PTS type response. And the fellow described to me on a break that anxiety and panic attacks were a regular part of his world and his life experience. And but in the moment, while the exercises were going on, there weren't any big dramatic events of any type, or from a rider coach perspective, they were making progress that was typical for the exercise. So it's just that there was so much going on with each of them internally that they were not really able to hear well, I don't want to put words in their mouths, but my expressing to them that they were doing fine and making reasonable progress was not significant compared to the internal experience that they were having.
Thank you for sharing that experience with us. I appreciate that.
They hit their personal limits?
Did they continue with the class after their exercises?
One of them continued for an additional exercise and then decided to stop. The other one did not choose to continue and left somewhat, I kind of, I don't know if this was embarrassment, but I interpreted it, as a, wanting to the interaction and the topic to just discontinue. So they, they left sort of as quietly as they possibly could. I had that one person check in with her, and then when she came out of the restroom, I was able to ask a couple of questions, but then, I was interpreting her body language at that point as not wanting to have the attention, and then she got in her car and left. And neither of them have returned as of yet. In one of the programs, there was an opportunity for them to, and I had the administrators reach out and let them know about that opportunity.
So it's Jason's show now. Welcome.
I think, talking about all of this, Belinda's given me some really good cues as to what to look for when somebody's struggling with a PTSD or PSD situation. What I like to tell my students, though, right at the beginning of a class when we're going out onto the range is, you know, you need to remember that motorcycling is not for everybody. You know, it's something that you want to do or at least try. And I mentioned, like, for an example, I might say, you know, golf is not my bag. I don't golf. I'm bad at it. I suck. You know, I don't like it. You know, and so sometimes learning to ride a motorcycle can be quite a bit overwhelming for some people, and so that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, don't be embarrassed. Don't feel, you know, like you failed because you didn't. At least you got out there and tried. And I try to stress that to my students to let them know that it's okay to not continue that journey if that's not for you.
I think the anxiety level, actually, you can kind of set the tone also from the very first moment you come in contact with them, and not just in person, on that email that you send, or, you know, if you have pre-contact of the class, the pre-class thing. So the wording in my email is always, I am so looking forward to being part of this adventure, this new adventure in your life, right? I'm so looking forward to being part of that. And just adding in those words of, this is going to be an adventure, it's going to be fun, it's going to be challenging. And there's just those really positive adjectives you can add even in that quick email that you're going to send them to remind them, hey, don't forget, this is what you need. You need a helmet, you need gloves, you need pants. You know, we live in Alabama, it's going to rain on you no matter what. It's, you know, those kind of things. But just adding in those little positive words at the beginning, and then using those words as they come in, repeating those words as they're walking in, thanking them for the honor of getting to be part of their story, their adventure. You know, this is going to be, man, these are going to be some great funeral stories, you know, those kind of things like that. Just being really positive about it. And that really sets the tone and brings those levels down.
Has anybody read or done something within the last week that has inspired them to learn more?
About what?
I took a hunter safety class to preview it for my kid. I learned about black powder guns I had no idea about. I'm not going to buy one, but I'm kind of curious. Now I want to learn more.
Let's see, I got my first COVID vaccine on Friday, and so I'm getting ready to get back to teaching. And so I decided that I should, especially since I'm moving from a full size to a modified range, that I need to verse myself on the new range cards and review the rider coach guide, and also observe classes that are going on, sort of going on already, to see how they're unfolding and what's going on. It's just, I'm very much looking forward to being back in the coaching situation.
Did you just say new range cards?
Well, okay, I should explain. I was a site coordinator and I was a program manager for Harley. And for the longest time, we used a combined range. That split out, so the state program now is on a full-size range and a Harley class is on a modified range that I painted and modified the range cards for and did a bunch of work for, but I've never actually been a coach on that range. So I need to go and observe and just see how things flow. I think it's a 60 by 170, so it'll be interesting. 8 students.
I got a shiny new rider coach guide this week because my old one was a little bit outdated. So that's inspired me to jump back into the rider coach guide as well as my range cards. Try to get ready for when we eventually have classes.
Nicole, how many pages are in your new guide?
Hang on, it's right next to me. 138.
I'm going to guess there's no rules of professional conduct in it.
Could be.
I'm in the middle of an RCP. We're approaching the 3rd weekend, and my candidates surprised me when I was asking them to open up to the rules of professional conduct, and they weren't there.
And the best part of that is you have to return all 7 pages of that for all of your candidates.
Woohoo!
Fun.
Nicole, is rider coach trainer prep in your near future?
As soon as somebody decides to hold one and the college allows me to travel. But the last I heard, there wasn't going to be a trainer prep this year, the way they were talking.
Don, I was inspired to learn something new this week. I had to study up about online scamming and catfishing. I believe that I was at the beginning of being ensnared into a long game romantic scam. I think I have evaded the trap.
You can't just leave that like that, Mark. I mean,
I think
really.
you can.
Or should. I don't know. That's mean.
I will tell you, I got an email this last week from a rider coach, or who I assumed was a rider coach overseas.
From Nigeria?
No, actually Japan. But asked me to do something, that I would normally do for a rider coach who is not in the US, especially if they're a service member. But I thought twice about it, and it was a good thing I did. You just never know when the kickstands will come out. But it was a simple scan. It was, will you buy a Google card, for using online for my daughter since I'm not in the US? And I almost fell for it.
I hadn't even gotten to the point where I was being asked for anything special, but there were just so many strange nuances to communication and inconsistencies in the profile that it got me curious, and I started digging, and then I ultimately kind of proved it out as bogus by asking this individual to send me a selfie of her flipping me off. And I figured that was bizarre enough of a request that only like a real person really responding to me as the actual profile would be able to pull, would be able to do that. I mean, what are the chances of you mining the internet and just happen to have that version of a selfie also? So I didn't get flipped off, and I stopped interacting with this person.
It's really sad that we can restrict so many people from using these social media platforms, but we can't stop stuff like that. And interesting sidebar on that is, in the last couple months, I've started using security software on my website, and literally my website gets pinged probably 7 or 8 times a minute from either bots or foreign countries trying to hack into the software or through customer login pages to gain access to a site like mine that is meaningless to most people. It's a strange world out there.
That's a surprising volume too.
Interesting. I run probably 4 different websites for me and a couple other businesses, and all of them, every last one of them. My son has like a page on the web with like 3 web pages for blogging, and it's getting tagged just as much as mine.
Jason, I saw your star performance with your PSA earlier today, announcing the melting of the snow. Do you get a lot of students through Facebook, and do you bump into any problems with advertising over that platform?
Oh, funny you should mention that. I got bumped off of advertising today, and got a message that said, "You are banned from advertising for the following reasons." And I'm like, but I haven't done anything yet. So I looked to make sure nobody else did something for me. And lo and behold, it was because they're now expecting you to have a 2-step verification for everything that you post or do or whatever. So after getting over that hump, I believe I have an advertisement up. And yeah, as far as marketing goes, aside from going to the dealerships, handing out business cards, making sure one of the benefits to having my own stuff versus what I get to do at the college is discounts. And more importantly, that I have, because you can put a discount code for an arbitrary amount of money, but the idea is it's tagged to a dealership. So then I have some way of figuring out potentially where these students may have heard about me. So for almost every class I have, you can type in a variety of dealer names and end up with $5 off or $10 off or whatever's going on. Or in Milwaukee, with all the stuff that Ted Jenkins helped me out with last year, I have a little bit deeper discount for Suburban Harley Davidson because those guys got the shaft in 2020. But trying to do that, that's the biggest benefit for me over having my own website. And I guess, Don, I was kind of curious and yes, Mark, I definitely use Facebook a lot. It seems to work out okay, but I'm not a master of Facebook analytics yet. So hopefully I'll get better. Don, who does your hosting?
I use a company called iPower. I've used them for probably 15 years. I mean, I've been on there a long time. And I use WordPress as my platform for web page. helped you? Not at all, did it?
No, I just wondered if it happened to be the same thing. My website runs off of Bluehost, and aside from an internal error like 2 years ago where I'd call and say, "Hey, my site's down," they're like, "No, it works out just fine." It's obviously your in-house. It's whatever it is. Well, my internet minion, one Mr. Robin Dean, called them, told them how it was, and told them to use an outside address to try and look at their websites instead of a house line for the IT folks. And lo and behold, it didn't work from an outside line. So then they started fixing stuff. And he jumped all over it. He's like, "We got to switch hosts." I'm like, "Let's just see what happens," because I don't have all kinds of time to figure out a new one. And so far, it's been really good. And if anything happens on my website, it's usually because Robin was dicking around with something. The worst thing that happened this year was that the Google map that it populates on the main page was like one page deeper. So that helps a little bit. I found that in the advertising things, not so much that Facebook ads are all that great, but if you create an event, and then of course it gives you the opportunity to add hosts. And if I talk to the dealers up front, they're more than happy to add, share, retweet. And then of course, if you tag them in it, regardless if they want to share that kind of stuff, all of their followers immediately see it if you tag pick your dealership in there. So let's see, South Carolina is Mountain Motorsports is huge down there, right? So that if would be one of those kind of things that I'd be looking at.
I've tried to do some affiliation stuff, and I ended up just deciding to opt out of it because there's so much time that goes into monitoring, making sure everything's working on the website. If things change, it just became very difficult for me to manage. I do use some Google Analytics, but it's, I'm a hack at this. I don't have that much time to be dorking around, but I do spend a lot of time posting little things on the website. So it's always work. Which brings up another topic. I've been watching the forum for the last couple of weeks and nobody's participating, so I'm feeling a little bit like MSF at the moment. I think the season is coming up and people are focusing on other things, and so I'm well aware of that. And I just get it. And it seems like MSF rider coaches on Facebook seems to be the place where people are going to hang out. So not so certain that the forum is going to last much longer.
We appreciate you doing that though, Dawn, like really do. Like I know, I mean, I may be only speaking for myself, but I appreciate you really trying, and so, yeah, I know there's other coaches out there that do appreciate you putting that out there and giving us that platform.
It's not, I appreciate that I'm appreciated. Okay. To be from the office of redundancy, I'm sure. But, it does come down to where am I focusing my time at? And so just like any business, we all have to make those decisions. And it just may be that that's one of the ones I'm making as I start to clean off the desk.
I think you have to factor in too, though, that we're kind of on the shoulder season right now and everybody's busy. But then once training starts, it will generate more content theoretically, and opportunities for discussion because stuff will happen.
Oh, I get it. And, I understand that, but I've also tracked the forum on MSF for the last couple of years, and typically in this time of year, there are more things happening, and so it is what it is, I guess, is the best way to put it.
I don't use Facebook at all, but I was just curious if the forum on Facebook, does that parallel the old MSF forum, or does it have some other type of tone or direction?
It's Facebook. It's a group, and people put up whatever they put up. So, you get all kinds, which is great because you get all kinds, but it may not appeal to everybody, Rick.
Rick, I'll say there's a lot of actual social dynamic on there, and sometimes there's just interesting things about motorcycling, and sometimes the most recent thing motorcycle related that someone bumped into, and I kind of like the variety show aspect of it, whereas the forum on the MSF Retsorg didn't have much dynamic for kind of some of the social components of us sharing our experiences with this particular job.
So this kind of goes back to being in the times that we're in and stuff like that. If it takes more than 2 clicks, people aren't going to go to it. And that's just me being honest, and also like Facebook ads, doing that kind of research, doing those things that I had, that I have to do for my company. And, even when it comes to counseling, you would think someone's like seeking help, they'll go wherever they have to find that help. But if it's more than 2 clicks away, or if that blog post, is longer than 2 paragraphs, more than likely, and that's just living in an ADHD world, and I know that the majority of rider coaches are over 40, but we still are in this times that we are. And like I said, if it's more than 2 clicks, people are going to lose interest very quickly. If it's, not very many people will sit and read or search, I guess, right? It's the beginning of the dark ages. It's actually one of my favorite lectures that a professor gave, was that we actually are living in the beginning of the new dark ages, because we don't have to seek and research, and we don't have to search for answers anymore. It's just right there. And so we do live in that age right now. So just kind of be aware of that too, as you're out there doing your hard work and you're trying your best. If it's more than 2 clicks, most people won't go to it.
I think Linda's totally right. I'm sorry, go ahead, Lynn. Oh, okay, Belinda's right. That is the #1 reason at Madison Area Technical College why we lose customers. This has been a problem since we put sign up on the internet. It's a tech college. I can only imagine that maybe that Nicole knows what I'm talking about at Illinois, but maybe they have it streamlined, who knows. We have to get so much data from a student before they're allowed in. One of the questions to this day is, which grade level did your parents complete? What this has to do with riding a motorcycle is beyond me, but after they get to maybe that question, they bought in enough. But before that point, they're starting to boil over. And when I can call my local Riding Academy dealership and say, hi, I'd like to be in a class, just say, sure, I'll take your credit card over the phone if you'd like to sign up. Done, they're there, they're in. So doing it on my end, I tried to make it painless. I'm sure it's not, give me your credit card, I'll take it over the phone, because I'm afraid of somehow that coming back on me, but not to the most cumbersome system on earth, which is how Madison Area Technical College is run. And my understanding is all that data is important only because we take federal funds, and therefore any class we offer requires the same question base and reporting to the federal government, let alone the state. So we lose a lot of people, and we're way beyond 2 clicks. So Belinda's right. I guess I should have ended with that. Belinda's right.
Jason, we don't have that problem with registration. Our registration system is pretty painless. because we're part of community education as opposed to academic for credit courses. But our website is cumbersome because it's all designed as kind of prefab pages through the registration system. So we can't just build a page for anything we want to build a page for. Our program has a page, and adding anything to it beyond that one page is very difficult. So that one page becomes very cumbersome.
I've been feeding edits to my web guy this week, you know, because stuff changes a little bit from year to year. And you know, it's always a challenge because I think there's some things that I think are important that people have in front of them, but you have to get them to read it. And, you know, it's like, it's this balance between dumbing it down so that people actually read it and having the information they need. And I'm not sure I've hit the right balance, but it's an ongoing process all the time. And, you know, the confirmation process, you know, had a conversation, I think I said last week, with the attorneys, and they're saying, well, it's important that the waivers are out there in front of them before they come to class, whether they're actually signed then, so that you can say that they've had a chance to review the waivers. It wasn't forced upon them. And, you know, in the past, it's been a link, but now I'm making it be part of the confirmation email. They don't have to click to open it up. It's there. And, you know, part of me is like, really, I have to do this? But, you know, I'm kind of trying to hit that balance of having it be accessible, but also thorough. It's hard.
Do you happen to also add the 6+ pages or PDFs of directions to get through the MSFE course?
No, I just send them there and they'll figure it out. And most of them do, as a matter of fact. I get very little backpedaling. Occasionally someone will get into it and be halfway through, and when they go to get back in, they have problems. But you know, maybe in the course of a season, I'll refer a half a dozen people to MSF tech support to sort out a problem. Most people do okay. We're not using coupons and stuff either, though. You know, they're kind of prepaid on the e-course, and they just go right in with a username and a password.
Isn't the real answer to that what e-course? What are you talking about? Because I hear that with shocking regularity, people that sign up for a $300 class and then read absolutely none of the contact information that gets sent to them.
That does happen. Again, you know, you can lead the horse to water, but you can't make them drink. And I just, occasionally I'll have, usually it's a parent, you know, the youngster doesn't follow through and do all this stuff, and the parent freaks out. And you know, and I have to say, well, here's all the places where that information appeared. I said, I'm not trying to give you a hard time, but it's on this page of our website. It's on this page of our website. They had to check the box that they agreed to it in order to sign up. Then it came to them in their confirmation email, which was sent to them again, and then again before they actually came to class. Tell me what I did that made this information be hard for you to understand, because I'm not seeing it. And it's very difficult sometimes, but happily few and far between. So
this brings me to a topic that'll be great to just kind of end up things tonight. Remember the days when it was just a phone call or somebody stopped by and you did the handshake and everything was good? Before we had websites, before we had waivers for this and waivers for that, and there was kind of a self understanding that if you do this, there are consequences, that yes, you can get hurt and it is dangerous and things like that happen. I just, you know, are we helping or hurting by being so electronically driven? And that's not to take away the value of get-togethers when we can't get together on a normal basis, face-to-face, or like in this case where we got people from Arizona to New York to Alabama and down North Carolina, South Carolina. You know, we gotta, Wisconsin, we got this big spread here where this works really well. And it allows us the opportunity to get together. But don't you miss the days where you just, stop by someplace and talk to somebody, or pick up the phone and dial, really dial, not push buttons and get what you need to get. I almost hate to call a business anymore because of all the menus I have to go through to talk to somebody real.
I believe that you're talking about the lack of personal accountability that, for whatever reason, I'm going to blame on the idea that you can sue anybody for anything, and chances are, for that anything, somebody won. So somebody else thinks they ought to also. Today, I had somebody challenge my refund request, and PayPal promptly pulled that money out of my account. Based on the idea, a customer called me and said, hey, I'm not going to get a motorcycle, so I want you to send me my money back. I said, do you remember when you signed up? I said, I'll reschedule you for any date you want because you're well outside of my 14 days, but no, I'm not doing a refund. Called PayPal, told them the service that they paid for was defective and that I needed to refund their money. I thought, all right, this is going to be awesome. So that's just another thing. It could be a waiver. It could be something else. I've had our lawyers and insurance companies tell us that the MSF waiver does not matter. We're going to pay for all of it anyhow. So we're not really sure why you're using it, because they won't stand up for it. And I just figure we're out here flying on our own and doing the best we can. And it is what it is.
And that's in every aspect of our lives, not just this. I mean, my wife ordered something online, didn't fit. And instead of sending it back, we just went to the store to return it and, just get a different size. But in order to do that, we had to have the receipt. Well, it was all done online, and, it's not on her phone. So the people in the store couldn't look anything up. We actually had to call the online store to search for the stuff so the people at the store could agree to do a swap of something that had the tag on from the store regardless. I mean, it's like the barriers are there for businesses to make money off of you if you're not willing to go the extra mile to argue something with them. It's a sad state of affairs, especially for older people who are used to just talking to somebody and doing a handshake agreement and making things happen. Believing in somebody, having trust and faith in somebody and their actions and what they'll do to be a good person with you. So, interesting thoughts. Hey, it's late. Time for me to go. Thank you all for showing up tonight. Really appreciate some of the really deep conversations that happen and give us insight on how we do this business. I will not be here next week. I'm taking a small vacation. You can thank Laura for filling in for me and anybody else that wants to. And the last thing I'm going to say is we are almost 6 months to the day where I originally said, hey, we should do 3 MTs. And guess what? Not one. So if you wanted to do that, if you wanted to make a mark for yourself, it's time. It really is time to take a couple hours for a 3-minute video to share with other rider coaches. I know, I'm harping. So I love you all. Don't take it the wrong way. And we'll see you next week or the week after.
Good night, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you, Don. Thanks, everybody.
Good night.